this wonderful event. We're going to go on to a panel discussion right now. The topic of the discussion is Journey as an Ambassador, Leading and Engaging Women Beyond Borders. The session is going to be moderated by Mr. Shariful Islam, the founder and managing editor of the Bangladesh Brand Forum. The panelists, please forgive me if I mispronounce your names. I'm going to do my best to do them justice. The panelists are Her Excellency Mrs. Marie-Annick BOURDIN, the Ambassador of France to Bangladesh. Her Excellency Sidsel Bleken, the Ambassador of Norway to Bangladesh. And His Excellency Mr. Mikael Hemniti Winther, Denmark's Ambassador to Bangladesh.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Shariful Islam from Bangladesh Brand Forum, and it's a truly an honor to be on stage, interacting with three very distinguished guests with us on a topic which we feel is not just important, but in the context of what we are trying to pursue over the last 3 days, last 2 days, and also tomorrow. This is going to give us a lot of insights into how we want to push the whole agenda of women in leadership. As Prima actually sets the context a little while ago, the core theme actually, owning and visibility, determines all the dialogues, all the sessions that are taking place. And now with our three excellencies, what I'll like to have it's a very informal discussion, and as you can imagine, through the topic we'd like to not just take sort of reference and learning from each of your country, because each country there are different learning and experiences, but at the same time also to tap into a little bit of your own personal journey. There is so much of learning which is there for each of you. So we'd like to sort of know a little bit more and get inspiration for all of us, those who are present here, but more importantly, what actually we can take out and try to apply some of the learnings for Bangladesh. So in the beginning, I'll try to sort of start from a little general context. And so we have been talking about women empowerment, progress of women for a long time globally. And it is true that there has been significant achievement, progress made over the last 20, 30 years. But still there is so much of room to grow and so much improvement to make. And especially when we look at women in leadership position, I think the need to do more becomes much more apparent. Whether we talk about women leading some of the largest corporations of the world, leading a nation, to any other leadership position, we see a ratio which is much more smaller. And that's where we feel, because that's where a huge improvement needs to be made. So I'll sort of request all of you to throw a little light on the perspective on this issue globally, and how do you look at it both from your country perspective, and if you want to add anything on Bangladesh context. So.
All right, thank you very much. I'm Marie-Annick BOURDIN, the French ambassador to Bangladesh, and I've been, prior to this very position, working in the High Council for Gender Equality in France. So it has also helped me consolidate a little bit my views, which I had been collecting since my youth. And that helps to give a global picture, a bit broader than parity in power positions or in economic situations. If you allow me, I would just wish to say that if you speak about women empowerment, we badly need to take the whole range of stereotypes or prejudices which affect the perception of women, this patriarchal angle that is placed on the role of women, and it's a very heavy brake on any move forward. The second point is personal, sexual, and reproductive health and rights, giving a woman the control of her fertility, of her fecundity, helps her to choose her own future. If she has too many children because she cannot choose, then she cannot run her own professional life, and she'll bring her children in the same vicious circle of poverty and probably of suffering and being just a victim of a system. Then I want to continue with another issue, which is quite an issue in all the countries of the world, actually. It's a question of violence, gender-based violence. Women are all suffering of it. Maybe I'll just say that in Bangladesh, the violence is probably at very high levels as compared to other countries. And this is an issue that everyone should take upon himself and herself as a serious matter to think over, to discuss, and to take at school so that we change the mindset. And that goes the same for the prejudice issue. Then this parity or gender access to various positions, it's unfortunately a process. We have to admit that it doesn't come in one day, that it just doesn't come because you adopt a law. There are so heavy resistances among the persons who actually benefit of the system that if you want to give a chance to women, you have to adopt laws, but also sanctions, and enforce those sanctions. That we've seen in France, at least, very clearly, in laws for gender parity, when we were just having a benevolent look at it, nothing was moving. Parties, political parties, do not designate women, do not give them a chance to campaign, do not give them the money or training. And we have to acknowledge that currently, given the unequal status women are facing, they are feeling shy, they don't dare to go straight away, they need to be mentored, to be assisted, to be propelled in a way forward so that they can assert themselves and be perceived as someone of strength or a strong personality who can stand for those elections and move forward, or who can stand as an economic leader or social community leader. I think we have to think it more globally. There are a range of issues, it's not only one. And that's, if you allow me, I'll just say this and I'll stop speaking too much. That's the reason why our government yesterday issued a plan as part of the 5-year grand national cause that our president has decided to promote for the equality among women and men. So his mandate as a grand cause, which is gender equality. And for this, yesterday, new measures were announced in terms of salary equality, professional equality, which remain an issue. You would not think that it is true in Europe. It remains an issue. There are 11 to 17% differentials in pay. There is this pay gap, and an incompressible part of the pay gap, which is just linked to the prejudice and stereotypes, and to the woman's inability to fight for her own rights or her own pay. A second set of measures is teaching further equality at school and fighting violence, gender-based violence, with creation of additional shelters for women who are badly treated. I should stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I'll definitely come back again. First, just to hear your perspective. I mean, we were discussing a little bit earlier, so if you can just throw a little light on that.
Thank you. Yes. The first letter I got from the organizers was, how do you, as a female ambassador, experience barriers in your work? And I said, I'm quite happy that the confidence is in me to put myself into the feelings of my female colleagues. But I can see now the subject has been expanded, so thank you for that. I wanted to touch on some. I come from a country that is considered very progressive in terms of gender equality, and in the work that I do here with my people at the embassy in Bangladesh, our focus is really on gender equality, and in Bangladesh that means actually much more focus on women than you can say on men. So I'll come back a little bit to the Bangladesh perspective, but also share the experience I had personally working with gender issues in my own ministry, that lag behind in gender equality, basically in the management side. We could see the top management of the ministry and also the ambassadors sent out were much less women than men. And it was not 50% or anything, although that at our universities, women are more than 50% now getting through university and getting a master's degree in Denmark. So of course they are better qualified to take high posts like government jobs that we're talking about than men are, but still not represented at the higher level. So we have been working very hard to improve the quota of women and analyze why it is that women are not getting to the high levels, because that also reflects on why women are struggling at the lower level of society, both in lower economy countries and also in wealthy countries. And I went to a really interesting workshop that worked with biases. I always consider myself, as Bremen said, share her feelings. I love women and I feel so connected to them. And I mean that in the broadest sense of the words. You can laugh and you can rightly so, because I mean that with my heart. But I realized during this workshop I also have my own biases towards women and towards anybody who is not similar to myself. And that was one of the factors playing in when we promote people. And I am in power to decide on other people's colleagues' fate and future. And it was a very strong awakening that I was mirroring myself when I saw people who I thought was qualified. I was looking at myself in the mirror and say, but this guy, and mostly a guy, would not be like me, therefore he's not very qualified. He doesn't think like me, doesn't speak like me, he's not extrovert or introvert. And if it's a woman, she's already subconsciously not as strong. So these things are biases, and we also use excuses in our systems that women, they don't apply for the jobs at higher place, and then that's because they have wishes for their life. But that's also because we are designing jobs as men, so the jobs become attractive for men and not for women. If women were designing the jobs, maybe men wouldn't apply for them and not be as qualified. So we actually started rethinking, and we have a very visionary male big boss at the Ministry, permanent secretary, but he is now on all but one at the next level, which is very high in the Danish government services. All of them are women except for one. So he is majorly, really thoroughly turning the tide, and I think we're going to see results of that. So that was maybe a luxurious and privileged development that I was in the middle of and observing, but I use it much when I'm considering Bangladesh and try to understand, although it is honestly sometimes hard when I hear the struggles female entrepreneurs are having when they try to promote sanitary napkins made of water hyacinths, and they are meeting men who say that they are against Islam and they are westernized when they want to make accessible sanitary napkins for poor women for 5 taka. Then they get this. It's just very hard for me to imagine how it must be. So I think as a man, I try to really have a dialogue with men in Bangladesh. I love to have dialogue with women and understand their struggle, and we try to define our programs to consider what the women themselves are saying are the barriers and their needs and the discrimination and the lack of space. But I really also try to connect to men and see why you're not giving them space, because you are actually some of the main stakeholders as well. We talk a lot about women empowerment and women's strength and women's leadership, and I believe that, but I also believe that men need to understand more, and that is a part of the work that we can do, influencing in all levels, at the normative values, in the families, in the society, but also absolutely, and I agree very much with my French dear colleague, if governments and enforcement agencies are not setting examples, not showing the leadership there, and the men and in these agencies and positions are not showing leadership and role models, it's hard. And therefore we also try to influence everywhere we can when we see legislation discriminating anything that prevents women's progress to come forward. And we go down to the village in the remote areas and speak to the women in the villages there and try to understand what will empower her, what will give her more space. And we talk to her men in the villages and the usually male auxiliary heads and all that to see. So there's a lot of work here in Bangladesh, but every time I go out and meet women and men who wants to work with it and I hear opinions, then I get encouraged again to see there are definitely agents and promoters and role models in this country so we can move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Excellency, if you can give your perspective on this, please.
Yeah, I think my colleagues have now covered quite a broad area of issues. I like to start a little bit with the history of Norway because I was looking into this in the Foreign Service and I found that the first female diplomat, she was appointed in 1939. The first female ambassador was not until 1975 and it was not until 2000 something that we were about 1/3 or up to closer to 50% female ambassadors. So this is processes that takes time. I think we have to realize that, but we also have to realize that this will not happen, you know, things will not change. If we did not have those first women who were brave and breaking the barrier, getting into this arena which were traditionally only men, if we do not do that, if we don't have women who are in the forefront, we will not have women leaders. I think that is one of the important messages. We have to, some of us have to be the brave ones. I'm the privileged one because I have come after all those women have fought for the rights of women in Norway. I think in Norway it was quite a change in the 70s. That was where we really had the fight for women in politics. Women went together in the local elections and suddenly people looked around surprisingly saying more than 50% of members in local government were women because women went together, they voted together and they voted for women. And that made a change, and that made a change in the political life in Norway and it made a change in the Norwegian society. Parallel to that, women also went much more into the labor market. I think that is one of the other very important aspects when it comes to gender equality and to women's liberation. That is that women get their own job, have their own income. They are not anymore dependent on their father, their brother, their husband. They have their own money, they make their own decision. And that, of course, gives them the freedom to make choices. And combined with the freedom that Marie-Annick was talking about, the freedom to decide whether you want to have a child, when you want to have the child, that is the sexual freedom is also very, very important. Those two things together changes the lives of women. When it comes to Bangladesh, it's a very sort of gender segregated society. There's a lot of work to be done, and as Michael said, not only with the women, but it's men and women to realize that men and women are equal, should have equal opportunities. And I believe you have to start with your education system. This has to do with not only with women having, you know, the same level of education. That is increasing much more in Bangladesh. Many more women have higher education, many more women have basic primary education as well. That is the first, that is maybe the most important, but also getting into universities, have the technical skills to go into leadership positions. But it's also about the way you teach in schools. What kind of attitudes do you teach? Do you teach the children that girls and boys have the same opportunity and they have the same rights and they should do the same things? That I think is also very, very important. And that is what, you know, throughout the years will make the real change, is that men and women would have the same opportunities, they would have the same education, that they would work together and they would respect each other.
Just one more thing, Excellency. You were talking about now 50% of the ambassadors in Norway are female.
Yeah, almost.
Almost. So there are a couple of discussions which were coming out. Do you have you noticed differences when in a decision-making position? One part is the skill, of course. So male and female professionals, according to the skill, when equal opportunity are given, they are reaching that position. But when a female reaches a decision-making position, how does that changes for other female professionals, not as a favor, but in terms of the inherent biasness which many male possess without even knowing? We all have it, as Excellency was very rightly saying, this is the hundreds of years of orientation which has actually created this orientation. Does that affect or does that make a difference? Have you noticed when in a decision-making position a female is there vis-a-vis a male, how does that actually influence the broader policy or the orientation to work or the opportunity that is given to male and female? Is there any difference between that?
I think there is a difference, because I think that women have in many ways more respect for each other. We have, or at least we used to say, the women in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, that, you know, we had these all boys clubs of those who were in the top management, and they all knew each other and they would all give each other favors. I think that has actually changed, and that has changed parallel to having more women in the leadership position, which I think is a very good thing. I think also, this is, but it's difficult to say what is actually the change coming from women in leadership, what is changes in society in general, because we have, it's much easier than it was 10, 20 years ago to be, you know, a woman with children making career. That's not only because women do it, but it's also because men take more responsibility. We have ministers in Norway who would be on leave for weeks and months to take care of their newborn child. It's not only the women. So this is a change, partly because we have more women in the various positions, but also because it's a change in society in general.
Okay. Thank you. Excellency, I'll come to you and would like to focus a little bit on your personal experience, personal journey. So if you try to sort of glance a very small glance over your life's journey, because you were also saying that, and in fact all of you were sort of referring to that while there has been a lot of improvement over the last 15-20 years in each of your country, there is still this biasness, these barriers, this stigma which still exist. So from your position, the fact that you have broken many barriers, because many people would inherently, when they hear you are an ambassador from France or Excellency as an ambassador from Norway, oh, it would be so easy. So it's basically you just pursue and it just happens. But the fact is actually it does not. You have to also, is there anything which, big barrier that you have to face, challenges that came up because you were a female in your career so far?
Yeah, thank you. I think I would like to support Sidsel in underlining that our predecessors, our mothers indeed also, and colleagues, a bit forebearers, have been also opening the way for us. And that's something that all of us and all women who are here should not forget, that there is a tendency sometimes to just assert oneself and think, okay, I can draw the ladder away because I've reached there. It's something that is not the order of the day. If you want women's empowerment to happen, you need solidarity. You need to be permanently taking care of others, and those who were in front of us also being able to recognize, acknowledge and thank, and those who are still in the making and who are looking for mentorship, for role models and whatnot, to also take them on board. Try to bring everyone forward and give that confidence that is sometimes lacking. As for me, in terms of breaking barriers or what, I think it's the case for many women. In our profession, even in student life and then in our professional career, we've been objected that we were a woman and we didn't need to earn our own salary. We would get married at one stage and someone would take care of us. And that was definitely not the order of the day for me, because my mother had to go through a life where dependency, financial dependency, cost her very dearly. And it was clear for me and for the 4 children we were that no, we would be, each of us, independent. And 3 girls, we managed to do that. My brother indeed also. I think, so it takes to go through so many comments, useless ones or friendly ones, laughing, you know, we are just joking. No, no, we are not joking. We are sending you a signal that you are a little thing, a minor child, and we know better than you what you need, what you should do. I have colleagues, I have no children. I have colleagues who, when being questioned whether they would go to Washington or New York, for example, were inquired. But you think with your 4 children, you can really go there. You'll be too busy, you won't be able. And this kind of stuff we all have been facing. Okay, fine, it's part of life. Yeah, it comes one day where you can laugh about it, but in the beginning, it's sometimes a bit tough to take, yeah? So solidarity is there again, having colleagues, and that was not only women, that can be also someone like Michael, can help you go through that little moment where you would just want to blow out and say things are not fine like this. I would want to stress 1 or 2 other points following on Sidsel. Regarding women, the difficulty we have is articulating our professional life and private life or family life. So I think indeed women, when they come in positions of power, will try to inject a bit of reason in the management of time, charters of time, meetings not too late in the evening, allowing people to go home because the children are going to come home and will need to be taken care of. And even if the husband or the companion has improved in his own approach of life, sometimes he's still waiting for the woman to do things. So we still try to think out of the box, let's say, and to think a bit more broadly than our professional challenges day by day, and try to get organized to give everyone a chance to reasonably work, but also reasonably live in his own world. And I would like to add something. We cannot essentialize people. We can't say a woman is necessarily doing this kind of leadership, whereas a man would necessarily do that. As I said, some can also draw the ladder away and won't be a woman in leadership as we would like them to be. That has to be said. One last point I would like to make, and that's a bit in disconnection, but it's for me very cruel. I see in Bangladesh very early marriage that goes along with early pregnancies, that goes along with a high mortality rate, maternal mortality rate. When I read yesterday 59% of girls being married before 18, I would like to stress that it is making Bangladesh so far down in the ladder of UN and UNICEF, in that case, convention, or not conventions, but references and indexes. It's so important to return to the concept of one person decides for herself. A little girl, whatever her age, should come to the age of 18 when she can really decide and make up her mind. She wants to be married, she wants to pursue studies, she wants to finish her schooling, and she'll see in due course with her companion when she will want to have a child. None of these things should be imposed. None of this can be decided upon by parents, by members of the family, or by whoever. And that brings me back to the issue of sexual and reproductive rights and health. If a little girl is taken to the position by a teacher, family members, because it's quite often that of having a child and not knowing what to do with a child, the question of menstrual regulation, or to be more open, abortion, should be openly debated. She should be in a position to ask for that and to pursue her schooling instead of being burdened and have a full life lost. Yeah, sorry for being preaching, but I think it's a very important issue.
This is a very, very important point you made, and are extremely key sort of provide ground for all the future gaps and the challenges that women face, very rightly pointed out. Excellency Bleken, what I would like to hear from you, how, let's say, within Foreign Office, when you talk about leadership, so looking into, okay, this is what as our leaders should follow and exhibit. Have you noticed any shift in terms of how leadership traits were promoted, let's say 5 years, 10 years back, what they are being talked about today and also tomorrow, where we are entering into a very different world, digital world, social media, which is going to fundamentally change. Do you see any shift in terms of what is being preached? And in that shift, do you think women has a more better fit with the traits that we are seeking from? So if you can talk a little bit on that.
Yes, I do. I want to follow a little bit what Sidsel also said in our own world, as we call it in the diplomatic service, because our organizations are kind of sometimes a bit, they're both reflecting society as a whole, but they're also in a strange artificial loop because of our stationing in and out, and the families are affected a lot from our jobs, much more integrated in the family patterns than many other jobs. But I think that when you're asking whether the leadership, I think a lot has changed by having more women leaders. In my young days, when we started talking about having more women into the jobs that men were also competing about, men, including myself, we got very worried. And we were, of course, mocking those women who got promoted. Either they got promoted because they were women and therefore not qualified, but just because of their sex. And also because they were using other tricks to get the jobs that women can use, that men cannot. While we were not questioning ourselves, but I started teasing my friends, so how did you get the job? Was that because you were a man? Because actually, basically, men got the jobs because they were men before. That at least was what we could see from the promotions, that you had to be a man to be promoted. So we looked at these women who were got promoted, and we thought these women are more male than we are. They are harder, they are unfriendly, because of course women were judged on other norms and standards. And they were also getting promoted in competition with men and men's values. So we got the stereotypes sometimes confirmed, and therefore we were realizing this is not good. But I see big changes now, because now the women are sitting higher up and setting much more norms. And I'm not just talking about in the diplomatic world, but in the whole way we look at leadership, values, management. When women comes in, it becomes more whole. We have work-life balances. We become as productive or more productive. In my country, we are much more productive than we were when we worked more. So we have increased productivity by lowering the number of working hours. We have one of the lowest working hours per person in the world, but we have one of the highest number of people working, because so many women are working in my country. I'm sure it's the same for Norway, maybe also for France. But there's a big change of the looking at how we participate in the economy. I think because of more female leadership and more influence from women, because there's more balance. And the funny thing is, it becomes more competitive in the world. You innovate more when you use complementary skills from women and men, and you organize better the work at the workplaces. You design better because you are marketing two sides of the view. When women come into architecture and engineering, you get better design because you cover a broader field of interest and stakeholderness. So yes, big changes, but most of it for the good. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellency, you have from Norway. We know is again one of the country where gender diversity, it's on the ground is one of the best in the world. So and you also mentioned a couple of things what actually helped it do, help the country to achieve that. Can you highlight one or two things which within the society from a very early stage, is it on the education system, policy, what in your opinion in Norway helped achieve the position as far as gender diversity is concerned to reach this place? If you can highlight one or two key points in that space.
I think this struggle that took place in the 70s was very, very important, that women started to speak out for themselves and to take their role, to be on the stage. I think that was very, very important. And following that, because we had, as we're discussing here about sexual and reproductive health and rights, we got the much more contraceptives that were accessible, and also abortion was allowed, which meant that women had larger choices, preferably using contraceptives not to get pregnant before they were ready for it. And because when you have less children, you have more freedom, you have more independence, you can spend your time differently. Parallel to that, we also got much better social care systems. So we have kindergarten, and we have of course the maternal and paternal leave for 1 year when you have a child, which means that when I was born, my mother, I think she were home for 6 weeks, and then she even had to take 1 or 2 weeks unpaid leave before she started to work again. That was in the late 50s. Now, I think that has changed a lot when you have this possibility to stay at home for a whole year, and you also have the possibility to divide it equally between men and women. Because this is also among women debated, because a lot of men and also some women think, you know, that this time belongs to me and my baby. I think that is something which is, we're always going to debate, but as I see it, it's quite important that, because when the baby is newborn, it's closer to the mother is breastfeeding. But, you know, after a very short time, and even from the birth, it's very, very important that this baby also has a relationship to the father, and that the fathers take the responsibility. I think that is the other important thing as well, that fathers take much more responsibility for the family, for the children, so that there's more equal choices for men and women.
Thank you, ma'am. It's such a interesting topic, such a complex and important one. I think we can really continue to have a much longer dialogue, but we have time issues. So I'll go to each of you as a closing sort of thoughts. Ma'am, I know that because you have so much of relevance in your last position, you have got some insight on Bangladesh. So if you are to sort of offer a suggestion, so one part would be obviously from political government's point of view, which are very important, and I'm sure governments are aware. If you are to offer something for a platform like this, we have got people from the industry, we have got people who are activists, very passionate about the cause. If you are to highlight 1 or 2 key points which these groups can pursue to push this agenda, what would they be?
I think I would advise all of you to read the Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. It's a convention that almost all countries in the world have signed and ratified, including Bangladesh. It's an instrument, or it's a convention in which the rights of women are listed and explanations given. Then there is a report which is done every 4 years to see what progress has been done by the country. And definitely, I think both the government but also the civil society can take advantage of those reports to move forward the issues and also select which ones are the most important. In any case, political parity will come as one of the major issues, but I think prejudices and the approach to women is a core issue that guides or that goes as a gender mainstreaming issue that every one of you can take and see then from there if you want to work on equal professional equality, or if you want to work on sexual and reproductive rights, or on violence, fighting violence, which is such a costly thing here, or on this child marriage and child infancy, pregnancy. So I just call on you to show solidarity, leadership, and bring as many people around in defense and promotion of women's rights. And there I join everyone. It's not only women, it's women and men changing our future.
Thank you. Would you share your final thoughts to, we have many young females who are going to lead the country in their own space. What thought would you like to leave to them?
I would say that I heard one say, I don't know if it was Prima, somebody was saying that leadership for a woman is not just leading others, it's also your own leadership, taking leadership of your own life. And I think also ignoring, and that's important also in this country, ignoring the stereotyping that you are met with, both from other women and men who want to hold back or feel threatened by the empowerment that you may realize. And I think that the understanding that all of us have to show to all of you young women, but you also have to understand that we will give you is an understanding that women's empowerment and contribution is a positive for all. It's a positive on the individual level. Women as a partner, as a friend, as a partner in marriage or as a couple is an incredible strength at all levels, in all layers of society, rich or poor, privileged or struggling. But it's also at the aggregated level, women are contributing. And I think societies where women are more active, and that is what you young women can see, where you get more active, use your education, and can contribute. These societies are materially much, much richer. And they are also much more happier, the people there, because they trust each other. So you can use that space of trust, show that you are not a threat, but you are a value. I know that is hard for you yourself to do, and that's why I'm constantly appealing to my male brothers here, that you have to show that you don't see women as a threat, but you see them as wonderful contributors at the individual level, but also as society. And if you've got a female leader ever in your life, you young men and old men, then you should be happy, because you can learn and you can see how these complementarities are a strength everywhere you move. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Your parting thoughts, ma'am.
Yes, I think I would say to the young women, take the opportunity. Don't wait for anyone to give it to you, because that might not happen. So we have to take responsibilities for our own lives, our own choices. And then I would like to say to both the men and women that, you know, we are equal. We have equal rights. We should then also have equal opportunities. This has to do with the values. It has to do with how we look upon each other. It has to do with how we treat each other. So for those of you who are parents, when you raise your children, make sure that they know that men and women, boys and girls are equal and should have the same opportunities.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful having the conversation from you. There was so much of insights that you share. It was truly a pleasure and privilege to have you on stage. Once again, thank you for your kind presence. So that's for us. I think the key points would be to take back some of the very insightful observations that our distinguished panels have shared, and from each of us to take them back in our own life. If we can make a difference in our own space, I think that will be the first step forward. Thank you so much for your presence at the panel.
No, I wanted to let you close your...